There's a lot of buzz going on about this round at Champs, where G2 decided not to play their eco and immediately jumped off Abyss to deny giving any resources away to Leviathan. The controversy mainly began with this tweet from Lothar, claiming that the strat was disrespectful to everyone involved and that G2 should be fined for making such a play. A lot of people disagreed with them and provided valid points, such as Zekin, who stated that playing the round doesn't only give opponents extra money, but also a chance at neutral ult orbs as well. On the other hand, players like TenZ have mentioned real counter-arguments, like if your opponents end up buying a lot of rifles, which become free to save into the next round. We can all agree that Lothar's delivery and attitude was awful, but we're going to have to ignore that for a bit so we can objectively analyze if the strategy is valid or not. In this video, we're going to uncover the actual numbers behind this strategy and analyze it from a statistical and mathematical point of view. By looking at all relevant eco round data from the last 2 years, we can quantify the real economic benefits of the strat in the current meta. But also we can understand exactly how much of a chance to win G2 are really giving up. Let's start by explaining the basic rationale behind the strategy. G2 only jumped off specifically on their defense side, as you can see that they also lost pistol on attack and actually played out their eco like normal. But when you're on defense, your opponents have a very high chance of getting the spike planted, which grants them 300 credits to every player for a total of 1500 credits, as well as an ult orb for whoever plants the spike. This is one of the big facts that Lothar got wrong in his original tweet, as he mentions that G2 are only denying 1000 credits. The 1000 credits comes from the 200 credits that you get for each kill, so actually in a worst case scenario where the bomb is being planted, G2 are denying 2500 credits in total. A lot of people have also mentioned that G2 are denying ult orbs because they aren't giving kills away, but you're also denying yourself ult orbs. I know you can make an argument for snowballing ults, but technically speaking, this is not an advantage. However, if the round were allowed to play out, as Zekin mentions, there are 2 neutral ult orbs on the map to collect, as well as the one I already mentioned you get for planting the spike. So in the worst case scenario, G2 are also going down a net 3 ult orbs if they were to play out the round. This is the basic idea behind G2's strategy. They've decided that it's better to give up any chance of winning the round in exchange for denying a worst case scenario of being down 2500 more credits and 3 net ult orbs. Now obviously not every eco round is going to be that worst case scenario, and there is always a real chance to actually win your eco. So let's start by looking at the actual chances of winning this type of round in modern day VCT. To filter out forced buys and ensure a large enough sample size for this analysis, I've set a credit spend limit of 2000, or in other words, 400 credits per player for the round to be counted in the dataset. The reason I chose this limit is because each player is guaranteed 4300 credits going into the next round, and if you spend 400 or less, you're still able to buy full armor and a rifle in the next round. If you're going to seriously try to win a round, I think each person buying a bit of utility is a must, and this can always be saved into the next round if it's unused. Under these conditions, I looked at every round 2 eco played in Tier 1 Valorant in the past 2 years to find out what the actual chances of winning are, and here are the results. The overall chance of winning the second round eco on attack is about 9.7%, while the chance of winning on defense is about 7.7%. This kind of aligns with G2's strategy, because not only do attackers get more money from planting the spike, the chance to win this eco on defense is actually lower than on attack. I've also split this up by map as well, so we can see if certain maps are easier to win ecos on than others. Fracture, for example, seems like an easier map to win ecos on both sides, while Pearl is another interesting case where it seems incredibly hard to win ecos on defense. If you could jump off on Pearl, it might be the best map to do so. Abyss is obviously not here because the sample size is way too low, but we can use the overall average to roughly say that G2 gave up around a 7.7% chance to win their defensive eco, but that's not all there is to it. Everyone who plays Valorant knows that winning eco rounds not only creates an incredible economic advantage in the game itself, but it also destroys the morale of the enemy team. Winning a full eco round counts for much more than a normal round and can have a massive impact on the rest of the map. We've seen games completely turned around by single eco rounds over and over in Valorant, and more recently, we saw Lev lose a second round eco to Classics against Trace Esports during the Champs group stage. This round definitely ruined Lev's entire attack half, and Trace ended up winning the map 13-5, completing a massive upset. So to add on to that 7.7% chance of winning that G2 are giving up, you should keep in mind that if G2 were to win a round like that, it would count for much more than a normal round. Now that we know the exact chance to win that G2 are giving up, let's start to dive into the economical data to fully understand if what G2 are doing is really that much better than just playing out a normal eco round. We explained the worst case scenario of giving away 2,500 credits to Lev, but there are actually so many more considerations that go into the net loss of credits if a round is actually played out. On top of the credits from kills and planting the spike, you can deny guns from being saved, break shields, and force enemies to use utility, which can easily add up to a lot. This is related to what Tens was saying about the common second round buy that EMEA teams do.
If the enemy does like the FPX buy, like the EMEA like FPX buy, where they buy 3 rifles and just keep 2 pistols, then it's just stupid to do.
If you aren't able to deny those rifles from being saved into the next round, you're gonna have to deal with a really tough buy in round 3. This is how a lot of top teams in the current meta are able to snowball their leads into important wins. We saw teams like Gen G do this during the Masters final against Heretics. As you can see, their third round features multiple rifles and an AWP, and all players on Gen G still have a healthy amount of credits for the next round if they lose. The best way to determine if G2's strategy is really worth it is to see whether or not they're actually minimizing the economic difference from their opponents by jumping off instead of actually trying to get some kills. In the case of this Abyss round where G2 jumped off, Lev only earned 15,000 credits for winning the round and nothing else, while G2 earned 12,000 for losing. This means the net difference between each team's earnings from the eco is 3,000 credits. Technically speaking, Tex used some trips at the start of the round, so Lev lost a bit more money than that, but we're still going to use 3,000 credits as our benchmark. To plot this out, I'm going to look at every tier 1 Valorant match played in the last 2 years, and find every single situation that matches a similar situation that G2 are in. This means they're a defending team that lost their pistol and also lost their eco, but did not spend more than 2,000 credits to try and win their eco. Then, for each of these rounds that fit the criteria, I'm going to calculate the net amount of credits that each team earned from the eco round only, the same way I did for Lev and G2. These values will account for all the credits that were gained or lost throughout the entire round, including kills, spike plants, utility used, guns lost, all that stuff. Now we can graph all these values to see the full distribution of credit differences for every single eco round played in the last 2 years, and the results are truly shocking. This histogram reveals the full distribution of credit differences for every lost eco round played in the last 2 years that fit our criteria. The x-axis represents the difference in credits earned from the eco round between the attacking team that won and the defending team that lost. These are set up in intervals of 1,000 credits. The y-axis is the number of rounds that fit under each interval. The median for this distribution is 1,250 credits, which means if you played an average eco in the last 2 years as a defender and lost, your opponents on attack would have only earned 1,250 more credits than you. This already means that the average case of playing out the round denies more credits than G2 did against Lev, because Lev was up 3,000 credits from the eco round after G2 inted themselves, but that's not the end of it. G2's net difference in credits lies in this bar I've highlighted as orange. Out of all eco rounds lost in the last 2 years, only 12.5% of them ended up being significantly worse than G2's, where the defending teams ended up with a greater loss of credits by trying to actually play out the round. Here's an example of one which turned out much worse than what G2 got by jumping off the map. In a match between Fnatic and Vitality, Fnatic are in attack and have won the pistol round. Vitality decides to play out their eco with Classics, but they aren't able to get a single kill, and on top of that, Fnatic have also planted the spike. This is exactly that worst case scenario that G2 are avoiding by jumping off, and Fnatic in this case earned 6,000 more credits than Vitality. When you see rounds like this without looking at the full data, it does seem like G2's strategy is really viable. But with the data in mind, we now know that G2 are only convincingly beating 12.5% of cases. About 12.2% of rounds end up similar to G2's, where other teams play out the round, lost, and still ended up achieving similar results. But the biggest point here is that 75.3% of lost ecos on defense result in a better outcome than G2 achieved by jumping off. There are actually a ton of cases where playing out the eco means defenders earned more credits from the round than attackers did, even though attackers ended up winning the round. This comes out in these negative net credit values for attackers, who have lost massive amounts of value in things like guns, armor, and utility. Here's an interesting example I found from the most extreme bucket, where G2 are actually the team on attack who ends up winning the pistol round. For their anti-eco, they're actually running the EMEA buy that Tens was talking about earlier, which involves 3 rifles and 2 pistols. Now we're gonna see MIBR actually play out the round because there's no option to jump off of bind. They spend a little bit of money, but again, nothing really to get them off of classics. The round goes in a very bad direction for G2 during the post plant, and MIBR end up killing all 5 G2 members, denying a ton of armor, 3 rifles, and a lot of utility. The net difference in earnings from this round was about negative 12,000, even though G2 planted the spike. This means that by playing out the round, MIBR technically denied 15,000 more credits from G2 than G2 did from Lev by jumping off the map. It's just crazy to know that G2 went with this strategy when 75.3% of the time, teams get a better outcome than them, and that's only when they actually lose the round. Not only are G2 willingly putting themselves in the bottom 25% of economic efficiency, they're also giving up that 7.7% chance to actually win their eco on defense, which if won, could have permanent impact on the rest of the game. Keep in mind that this research doesn't include the impact of the neutral ult orbs that attackers could get, but I think we have already more than enough statistical proof to say that G2 probably shouldn't have jumped off the map. But stats aren't everything, so let me tie it back to one last comment about the actual game between G2 and Lev. If we look at how this game played out after G2 gave away round 14, they bought up in round 15 and happened to lose as well. However, they managed a forced buy in round 16 with primarily Bulldogs and were able to win the round. Normally, this type of forced buy win would mean a breakpoint in Lev's economy, but since Lev were able to save so much money from earlier, they can do a perfectly normal buy with an op in the next round. G2 are 2 rounds away from losing the game, but are still so far from creating that economic momentum that they need to start winning consecutive rounds. This just means that G2 had to start their comeback from their eco round and really play to deny more money than they did from jumping off. I still think it's great for teams to experiment with these situations, and personally, I think it's ridiculous to say G2 are disrespectful for trying something like this. I agree with Durka that it's up to Riot to design the game in a way that doesn't have any abusable mechanics, rather than banning the strat or fining teams for doing it. This particular strategy just didn't give G2 the advantage they probably thought it did, but again, it was never going to be the main reason they lost the map anyway. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, because it helps me out a lot. Comment on what you thought about G2's strategy and let me know what other interesting topics you might want me to explore. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.